What's up, y'all? We are back with another edition of DNVR Rams Live. As always, I am Justin Michael. Hope everybody is having a great Friday morning. We've got a fun weekend ahead. We got basketball tonight. We've got a massive football game on Saturday. CSU going out to Fresno State, looking to extend the winning streak to 6 games, currently rocking a 5-game winning streak to begin Mountain West play, trying to keep their Mountain West championship hopes alive. I'm going to give out some keys to victory for CSU in this one. I kind of talk about what's gone wrong for Fresno State of late. I highlight some of the areas that I think CSU needs to do well, basically, in this matchup. I will talk a little bit of hoops. I'll kind of set the scene for the matchup with UC Riverside tonight. Been a while. It feels like it's been a while since CSU played Ole Miss, so I'll kind of lay out what I'm looking for in that one. We'll give an updated Mountain West power ranking. We'll pick against the spread for the rest of the league. All that fun stuff that you guys are used to. If you're rocking with us, say good morning in the Toyota chat. If you wouldn't mind giving us a thumbs up, I'd appreciate it as well. Shout out to everybody in Ram Nation. You guys are incredible. It's funny, I was kind of going down memory lane yesterday, reminiscing about the McElwain era with the news of his retirement. Still feels kind of weird to me. Makes me feel very old at this point. And I realized on this day, exactly 10 years ago, November 22nd, 2014, I got to be on the sideline for an entire game for the first time in my career. It was a 58-20 win over New Mexico on senior day that extended CSU's win streak to 9 games that year. If you remember back, they started 10-1. Crazy that was 10 years ago. I got the credential right here, which is they've upgraded the process a little bit. I used to every week have to take these little string things and put them in the hole. That was part of my responsibility for the team. Clearly very important. I was back then. But it was a lot of fun that day to be on the sideline. Not the greatest crowd in the world, 22,131. I've had a lot of people ask me what I anticipate the attendance to be like for the matchup against Utah State on Black Friday. I do think having the students on break hurts your cause. If the game was Saturday, that does give you 2 more days for some of those students to get back on campus the day after the holiday. You are going to lose some. I hope there's an effort from some of the local students to show up. Rams are certainly going to need that presence, and it could be the biggest game in Canvas Stadium history, at least in terms of what's on the line. But obviously you've got to beat Fresno State to even get to that point. So we'll talk about all of that. Throwing it back to that 2014 game against New Mexico. If you remember back, it was actually the second season in a row that the Rams had a running back go for 6 total touchdowns against the Lobos. Capri did it back in 2013. In Albuquerque, that game was a shootout. This one, more of a throttling from CSU. The Rams scored 51 points between the second and third quarters alone. They scored 7 between the first and the fourth. They let off the gas at the end after D. Hart scored his 6th touchdown. I think it was like a 55-yard carry. McElwain not trying to hang 80 on him. They put some of the backups in. They called the dogs off a little bit, but D. Hart ended up having 20 carries for 230 yards, 6 total touchdowns, and what ended up being the last home game of his career. I talked about yesterday, had McElwain come back for that 2015 campaign. Maybe they start the season a little better. Maybe you have another, 8+ win season. I think D probably comes back in that instance. But really just a dominating win. Rashard Higgins had a big day as well. 10 catches for 167 yards and a pair of touchdowns. He was a Biletnikoff finalist for a reason that year. The Rams had 698 yards of total offense. That was a record. I should have gone back and verified if it still stands, but at the time was a single game record for CSU. Unfortunately, 6 days later, the Rams ended up losing to Air Force in Colorado Springs. Talked about that a little bit yesterday as well. That was that was heartbreaking. So in a lot of ways, exactly 10 years ago today was kind of when the party came to an end, in terms of the McElwain era. That was kind of the last hurrah, was that senior day win over New Mexico. They ended up losing to Air Force in the Springs. Really frustrating game, some confusing decisions late that ended up costing them. And then, obviously they got throttled by Utah in the Las Vegas Bowl. Another thing that you could kind of look back on and say, maybe if McElwain had stayed, they play a little bit better. The focus level of the team is a little bit higher. I can tell you that wasn't the most locked in CSU team going into that matchup. Unfortunate that it came to an end that way, but that 2014 season, certainly one that I'll always remember and look back on fondly. It was a fun ride. It was the first significant run that the Rams had in quite some time, basically 2 decades. Jumped into the top 25 that year. Had the big time road win over Boston College, homecoming against Utah State. It was just a lot of fun. What up, TZ in the Toyota chat? Much love, my guy. Shout out to everybody rocking with us this morning. But man, I feel old looking back and realizing that game was now 10 years ago. And it also is pretty crazy that it's been that long since CSU has remained relevant and been in the mix for a Mountain West championship at this stage of the season. 2017 was close. It's kind of splitting hairs, to be honest. At this specific point of the year, though, they had already lost to Wyoming, to Air Force, Boise State. They were eliminated from contention at this point. So really, you do have to go back to that 2014 campaign. 10 years, which is saying something, but it's also a big reason why I've been a big proponent of enjoying the ride this year. Obviously, still a lot of football to be played at this point, and we're hoping to see CSU accomplish things that, frankly, they never haven't, or at least haven't accomplished in a long time. I hope they live up to the moment this weekend, because even as fun as that 2014 season was, obviously it all came to a crash pretty quick, and that's just kind of what you're hoping to avoid this weekend. Similar thing in 2017, you're riding high, you win 4 straight games against Mountain West competition coming out of the non-conference slate off of that trip to Tuscaloosa. You're riding high right now, but you've got to capitalize. You're going out on the road against a Fresno State team that has stumbled of late, but has a lot of experience. They're talented. They've got talent at the skill positions. They've got a quarterback that's played a lot of football, and their front seven, they've got a lot of experience as well. So we'll get into all of that. I just kind of wanted to briefly look back on that game 10 years ago and just kind of draw some comparisons to the situation we're in. Maybe give a little bit of perspective. I understand that CSU has not been racking up the biggest wins in school history or anything like that. It's not like, they've beaten a bunch of SEC teams or something like that. I understand it, have had a favorable schedule, but it has been a decade. It's been a decade since CSU has been in this spot. And if you can't enjoy this position that we're in, a chance to win 8+ games for, I think, like the 5th times this century, I mean, what are you going to enjoy as a college football fan? We're all hoping to see this team accomplish more and take this to the next level. Certainly this doesn't have to be the ceiling, but I mean, if this is the floor, it's been a pretty good year, all things considered. You've had multiple rivalry wins, and you've had a great record at home with an opportunity, I think, to win the most home games ever. It's going to be a technicality just because you played more home games this year than you typically do. But it's been a good ride. Now we just want to see them kind of finish it off the right way. Looking forward to getting into this matchup. Again, we'll talk some hoops. We'll talk power rankings, picks, all of that fun stuff. I'll get to as many of your questions, comments as I can. We got one here from TZ. Felt the seat was hot for not just about wins, losses, with the wins and the potential. Is the seat cold or just warm for JN, or is everything good now? I mean, I wouldn't say everything is just solved necessarily. Certainly you need to finish on the right note. I think his job is safe going into next year, if that's what you're asking me. I do think that winning in the Springs and winning the Bronze Boot, I think that got him some leeway. But again, if you really fumble here down the stretch, you go 0-2 to close the year, blow your chance to go to a Mountain West championship game. Maybe you get throttled in the bowl. Like, I don't think he's sitting pretty going into next year in that situation or something like that. But I do think that he has bought himself a lot of goodwill with the success that they've had this season, and I think they're in a really good spot. But again, it all kind of comes down to how you finish, because as fun as that 2014 season is, the conversation inevitably always comes back to woulda, coulda, shoulda, and what if? What if they had beaten Air Force in the Springs, get a spot in the Mountain West title game? You have an opportunity potentially to play your way into the Fiesta Bowl that year, and instead you end up getting blown out in a kind of a lame duck game against Utah. And that's just what I'm hoping to see this team avoid this year, is to end on the right note. You've done a great job of putting yourself in position to contend for a conference title. You've done a great job of responding after, kind of an up and down performance in the non-conference slate. But we've talked a lot about November being the month that defines your season. And if you want this to be a month to remember positively and to not look back on like, oh man, what could have been, like, frankly, every single other opportunity the Rams have had in this spot since Sonny Lubick is they got to get it done. So that's where we're at. I'm going to take a break real quick before we get into some of this info on Fresno State. Again, shout out to everybody rocking with us in the Toyota chat. Speaking of Toyota, trucks have always been a part of Toyota's DNA. For generations, Toyota has built durable legends destined for greatness and perfect for Colorado. Whether you're conquering off-road trails or hauling the weight of the world, there's a Toyota truck that's just right for you, like the all-new 2024 Tacoma and the return of the iconic 2024 Land Cruiser. Toyota offers 17 models with available all-wheel drive or four-wheel drive, like the Epic 4Runner. They also offer more low and zero-emission vehicles combined than any other automaker to give customers numerous choices to reduce their carbon footprint. 16 hybrid vehicles to choose from, like the Tundra iForce Max hybrid truck, not to be outdone. Toyota SUVs take command on the road and on the trail. You can drive them around Cap Hill. You can take them out on the Western Slope, Rocky Mountain National Park. They're as versatile as it gets. It's awesome. Explore the road less traveled without sacrificing smooth city rides. Toyota is a proud partner of CSU Athletics and the official vehicle of DNVR. I want to talk to you guys about Premier Members Credit Union. A lot of Americans, probably many of you, myself included, we're living paycheck to paycheck right now. I want to shout out Premier Members Credit Union. It's an awesome place, financial institution based right here in Colorado. With PMCU, you get local branches, friendly tellers, and the tools you need to save smarter. Check out the Reverse Tier Money Market. They're an organization that serves the community, and the Colorado community in particular. Love that. And whatever your goals, they can help. Why not see what they can do for you? Check out becomepremier.com to learn more. Big shout out to PMCU. Big shout out to all of you as well. Toyota chat is popping. Love the conversation. Try and get to some of these at the end as well. Let's get into Fresno State here. Fresno State is currently 5-5. They're on a 2-game losing streak at the moment. They've been a hard team to get a read on. They get throttled by UNLV. They lose a heartbreaker against Washington State, and you're wondering, are they done? Should you stick a fork in them? Then they respond with a pretty impressive win over San Jose State. Defense was dominant in that one. They forced 4 turnovers. Since then, though, they've really struggled to sustain drives offensively, which is a bit confusing because they have experience at the skill positions. Mikey Keene's one of the better QBs in the conference, or at least historically he had been. Hasn't been his best season ever. But this is a big opportunity for CSU to end this season on a high note, to get to 8 wins. You have a chance for a 9-win regular season, which I think anybody would have taken if you floated that possibility at the beginning of the year. But kind of getting back into Fresno State here, like I said, they've been hard to read. They're up 20-7 going into the fourth quarter against Hawaii on a day where really neither team had done anything offensively. Neither team, it was a weird watch too, because in a lot of ways they weren't even trying to. I think both teams' average air yards per attempt was about 5 yards. I mean, a lot of dink and dunk. Neither team ran the ball particularly well. I mean, Hawaii did go over 100 yards, but it wasn't like they were torching them on the ground the way that Air Force then did the next week, where they went for like 344. But offensively, their inability to sustain drives has been a factor of late. They only had what was it, 176 total yards in that game against the Warriors, and that's at home. So you established the early lead, but basically not able to finish the job. They left the door open. Hawaii got hot late. I ended up throwing for a couple of touchdowns, including the game-winning score with about 15 seconds later. 15 seconds left. My goodness, sorry. Really gut-wrenching. And then they go out on the road and just really did not look up for the moment at all against Air Force. It looked like a team that had kind of lost its soul the week before against Hawaii and just had no interest in playing the Falcons. Frankly, got their ass kicked on both sides of the ball. They did move the ball offensively. Keene played well in it. He only had 3 incompletions. One of them was an interception, but he wasn't the reason they lost that game. Threw a couple of touchdowns, 3 touchdowns to be specific, but this is a big moment for them. If they lose this game, they got to go out on the road against UCLA, hoping to win a game and avoid going 0-4 and missing out on postseason contention after getting within 1 win, in October. That would be a really rough way to go out. I think from CSU's standpoint, this is kind of a statement opportunity. Everybody has tried to poke holes and, they're not beating good teams. They're not doing this. They're not doing that. I don't care that Fresno struggled of late. If you go out and you win this game, you put yourself in position to play your way into the Mountain West title game. And I mean, if you could get some help, there's a scenario where if you win and UNLV loses, you clinch your ticket this weekend. If Boise State somehow were to slip up against Wyoming, we'll get into that when we get into our picks. Don't anticipate it, but if you could get a miracle there, you still have a path to hosting the title game even. So there's just a lot at stake. You've done a good job to this point. I feel like offensively in that game against Wyoming, you did a good job of running the football. Stalled a little bit in the third quarter for sure, and I think injuries played a factor there. We'll see what the health situation is like. They anticipate most of those key veterans should be back, should get Jack Howell back this week as well, which is huge on the defensive side. But I feel like I've said a lot of these points for most of these matchups, but again, football, not often as complicated as we try to make it out to be. You're trying to make Fresno State one-dimensional the way that Air Force and Hawaii were able to. They have not ran the ball well of late. You put it all on Mikey Keene. That's a tough spot, particularly if you are then running the ball well, and they have been susceptible on the ground. From CSU standpoint, you want to be able to control possession. You want to be able to dictate the tone. I feel like that's been one of their greatest strengths in this win streak, is they are dictating the tempo and the tone of which the game is being played. Teams like Nevada, teams like New Mexico, they wanted to play up tempo. They want it to be a shootout. That's where they feel comfortable. CSU very intentionally not allowing you to play that way. Very similarly to the ways Wyoming and Air Force kind of grinded out games. But what's nice about this CSU team is I think their ceiling is higher than that offensively, because you do have talent at the skill positions. You have all this speed out wide. You've got a quarterback with a ton of arm talent who's coming off of a really impressive game. In my opinion, the best performance of his career. And they're getting closer to like really breaking through that next level. Left a little bit of meat on the bones. This past weekend, the fumble with Tommy Maher, that was frustrating. Love that they come right back to him though, and he redeems himself in a major way. They need to continue to build on that and kind of show some of what they showed against Wyoming. Some of that vertical passing game was really encouraging. I love the sideline shot to Goody. Loved, going deep to Maher. Would like to see a little bit more of that. Not a ton more, but a couple more attempts per game. Would like to see some of those rollouts that we saw in particular against San Jose State. I think that helps you in a lot of ways, because the one complaint I think you could have about CSU of late, along with maybe not scoring as many points as they should in some of these conference wins, is that as well as they're running the ball, and statistically speaking, they've been tremendous. I mean, they're pounding the rock. The O-line's been great. Both Marshall, Dupree, and Morrow, they have all really played well this year. And some of those key third and short spots, the Rams at times have not been super effective. They were not good on third down this past week as a whole. I just really struggled in that area. That's definitely a key for CSU against Fresno State. They've got to be able to sustain drives better. There were a lot of things about Wyoming. If you really wanted to nitpick, like they didn't win the turnover margin. Typically, they've been really good there. They're +5 in the winning streak. So that's another area you would like to have success. especially with comparing it to Fresno State and what they've been able to do. When they've won the turnover margin, traditionally they've won their games, and when they've had some giveaways, they've typically been in trouble. CSU, I want to see them control possession. It doesn't need to be plus 10 minutes like it was last week, and some of that had to do with just how much Wyoming struggled. They were inept in the passing game, and the rushing attack wasn't a whole lot better. I mean, you take away that one 63-yard run, that was basically all they did all day long. But I do want to see them be like +5. That would be really encouraging, because to me, that means the defense is getting off the field. It means you're running the ball with success. But I would be okay if it was a little bit closer, because that could, in theory at least, also mean that you're maybe breaking off some explosive plays. And I liked what they did with Caleb Goody this past week. He had an explosive carry and an explosive catch, finding ways to get the ball in his hands. I think that is going to be really big for this team. I think you've got to continue to trust your quarterback, though. He's, over the last month, really displayed good decision-making. I thought he looked as comfortable in the pocket as he has looked at any point in his career. If you're going to be a championship-level team, as well as they run the ball, you don't have GNT back there. You're still going to need to trust your quarterback to step up and make big plays. And I think he has earned the opportunity, based on what he has shown over the last month, to kind of open it up a little bit. I don't think you abandon what you've been doing, because frankly, you have found a foundation that has allowed you to sustain success. I think you really lean into that. And as Jay Norvell told the media a couple weeks back, if you've got red paint, you paint the barn red. They've got really good running backs. You want to lean into that. But I do think that is kind of how you take things to the next level. And knock on wood, if you were to get there down the line and wanted to compete with a team like Boise State, I think you have got to let your quarterback do his thing a little bit, because he does have a lot of arm talent, and he's got the ability to really change the game. I've been really impressed with his growth this year. Hopefully he's able to end the season on a high note as well. I got some questions here I'll get to. Carrie, do you think Jay is more in it for the long haul or more of a Coach Matt category? It's tough to say, guys. I can't speak for the coaches. I think, being completely transparent, it's very unlikely that you're going to have another Sonny Lubick type in any sport, as the current college landscape is currently constructed, because the disparity in resources between a school like CSU and a program in the SEC or the Big Ten, you just can't compete with it. It's going to be really hard. They're very rarely going to turn down those types of jobs. And it's not a negative on CSU. It's really just kind of economics and the reality of the situation. There's always going to be somebody out there that can offer a bigger paycheck than CSU. Now, do I think he would just jump for any opportunity there was at this stage of his career? No. But I can't speak for any of these coaches. And I honestly, at this point, the longer I'm around the sport, the less I worry about it. If you get a coach poached, it's frustrating, but it also means you're winning. And CSU has not been in that spot in a while. So I would like to see him stick around. I think having continuity would be important for CSU going into the Pac-12. I think having a new staff going into the Pac-12 is just not the spot you want to be in. But that's kind of where I'm at with that. Getting back to some of the keys against Fresno State, and I agree with you, TZ. The Pac-12 is known for quality QB play. Definitely going to be a factor as you get into that conference there. I want to see CSU win some of those areas that they have traditionally won in this winning streak. They didn't win the turnover margin last week. You'd like to get back to that. Probably in the winning streak, at least, their worst performance from special team standpoint. They gave up some returns, which they hadn't really done this year. Missed a couple of field goals, had not done that. That's been one of the biggest strengths for CSU, is winning that third phase of the game. Out on the road, you cannot afford to leave points on the board. If you have a chance to put 3 on the board, you've got to make those field goals. Obviously, the turnovers in the red zone have been frustrating, and I think 3 of the 5 wins, you've now had a red zone turnover, so that's another area that I would like to see them clean up. Tommy Maher could have walked into the end zone, said he muffs the ball. Like, it's just those little things. And that's the biggest difference between really burying a team and leaving the door open. And as we saw a couple weeks ago with Fresno State, if you leave the door open for someone, you never know what might happen to you. You want to get out to a hot start the way that you have of late, but then you've got to find a way to step on their throat, rely on that run game, and really put them away when you have an opportunity to slam the door. I want to talk a little bit about hoops tonight. I also want to get into power rankings, picks, all of that fun stuff. I am going to take a quick break, though, and I am going to shout out our partners over at Coors Light who encourage you to choose a chill mindset. A lot gets thrown at us in life between work, between friends, between social media. It can be a pain. I'm having car troubles, got to deal with that for the rest of the day. I'm dreading it. I'd rather go live for 4 hours than deal with that this afternoon before the basketball game. But that's life. You got to rise above it. It's all about the little decisions, and you want to make sure that you are choosing a chill mindset. You want to be a chill guy, or whatever that stupid meme is that we're seeing all over social media. When the mountains turn blue, it's as cold as the Rockies. Coors Light is cold lagered, cold filtered, and cold packaged for a smooth finish. When you embrace a chill mindset, it's a good time to choose chill and crack open a Coors Light. Make the most out of the times you choose to chill. Choose Coors Light. Get Coors Light delivered straight to your door with Instacart by going to CoorsLight.com/DNVR. Celebrate responsibly. Coors Brewing Company, Golden, Colorado. I also want to shout out to the homies at Raisin Canes. I could go for some Raisin Canes today. You should race in there yourself. Make sure you get some delicious chicken fingers. They're always cooked up fresh for you. Those crispy crinkle cut fries, the buttery Texas toast. Cane slaps. It always goes hard. For cooked order, hand battered chicken fingers, race into Raisin Canes, turbocharge your chicken fingers. Get them even faster by ordering online at raisincanes.com or through their mobile app, Raisin Canes Chicken Fingers. One love, y'all. All right, give me 1 second here. All right, let's talk a little bit of hoops, and then we'll get back on football and finish up for the day. Answer some of your questions and comments, which we are flagging behind the scenes. Shout out to our guy Riley running the sticks, making this all come true. CSU alum, we got more Ram power on the show than ever, which is great. The vibes are great going into this weekend. Want to make sure you capitalize on this moment. An opportunity for CSU men's hoops to get the vibes right as well. Coming off of I don't want to say disappointing, because I think the outcome against Ole Miss was expected. Disappointing first half, ultimately fought back into it, made things interesting, and then kind of ran out of gas. The outcome was about right where I expected. Would have liked to have seen a little bit better effort out of the gate. Just kind of looked flat on both sides of the ball. And I felt very similarly against DU. Just didn't have a ton of juice. Hopefully that's not a persistent issue for CSU. But again, did like that they fought back into it. You know, after being down, 21 at one point in the first half, they got within like 8 or 9 in the second half. And then Ole Miss kind of closed strong there. A couple of things I'm looking to see from CSU. They've got to be better on the glass. They're -2 overall for the year in rebounds and total rebounds. It's not like they're playing the stiffest competition as a whole. Ole Miss, that's good athletes. Tennessee State, I thought that was more of just an effort issue. Those guys were really flying around and playing hard. But CSU's got to kind of embrace some of that themselves. They don't have a true dominant 5, and they've unfortunately had some injuries there. Bemba and his hip issues are really concerning at this point. On just being honest, him making a leap, I thought was a major factor with CSU pushing for another NCAA tournament bid without him. A little bit worried about the depth down low. You can put Morton down there, but they're going to lack some size there. And it's been an issue at times, both defensively and on the glass. It's going to be tough because Nate Clifford, you're asking him to do so much more offensively than what he had to do last year. It's tough to then ask him to take on some of that defensive burden and to rebound the way that he did last year. He might have to, though. I mean, he might be the only guy on this team that's really capable of kind of taking over the game on the glass. They've got to be better, though, because it's just so big for their ability to get out in transition. That's one of the things that I felt like has been lacking these last couple of games. They've not been able to get out and run on teams. Some of that starts with rebounding. Some of it starts with getting stops defensively. You got to create more turnovers, though. CSU, they had 22 steals over the first 2 games. So you're averaging 11 a game. Some of that might be early in the year, your other team a little bit rusty. But they've only had 6 over the last 2 games. They need those. They've got to get out in transition. They're not going to be quite as good in the half court this year without Isaiah Stevens. That's not a shot at anybody on the team. That's just the reality of the situation you're in. You lost the best point guard in program history, a guy who is very much rare in the game today. You've really got to lean into those opportunities and take advantage of the athleticism that you have, because you've got some guys, whether it's Nate Clifford, Keyshawn Williams, even Bowen Bourne, they're quick and they can be pretty dangerous when you're playing at pace. I think that's going to be a big key for CSU. I'd like to see them get out and run. Tonight, I will say, when you look at UC Riverside, they do a really good job of limiting their turnovers, so this might not be the best opponent to do that against. But if you are able to kind of assert your will there defensively, dictate the tempo, again, a lot like we're talking about on the football side, if you can dictate the pace of which this game is played in your own building, I think that would be great. Just want to see the Rams get back in a rhythm, get their confidence back before a big game against Washington out on the road. I feel like the shots have been good. Like I've liked the shot selection for the most part, and I like the mentality of this team. I feel like they have done a good job of sharing the basketball. When you look, they're averaging 19.5 assists per game on about 28 made field goals with so many new pieces. That's really encouraging, and it should be better, actually, if they could just hit some of these open jumpers they're missing, especially from deep. I feel like they have gotten a ton of good looks from behind the arc, and they're just not falling, and you need some of those shots to fall. Jalen Lake has shot the ball really well. He has been tremendous just in really every element. He's been so big, scoring about 10 points more a night than he had the last 2 seasons, really embracing that role in the starting 5. I wrote about it. A great time to become a DNVR diehard, get access to all that premium written hoops and football content. But he has been so big for this team. Him and Neek were tremendous against Ole Miss. The problem was nobody else could really buy a bucket, and they need some of these other transfers to get in a rhythm. When he's been able to stay on the floor, Crocker Johnson has been a stud. His struggle has been on the defensive side. He's racked up a lot of ticky-tacky fouls. He's got to try and avoid that because they need his presence in the paint. When CSU has been able to get in the paint, they've been solid. They're shooting like above 60%, 62.3% from 2-point range right now. So they've been effective when they've been able to get down there. It's just a matter of being able to create those opportunities. And, I think being able to depend on some of these other guys to stretch the floor could open up some things. You need Bowen Bourne to shoot the ball better than he has. Keyshawn Williams, outside of night 1, has not been in a great rhythm offensively. You're going to need some of these transfers to kind of get it going here as the season progresses. It's going to take some time. I've been very open about that from the summer, that I thought it was going to be pretty up and down here. I think there's going to be moments where they really flash their potential, and I think there's going to be some stretches against Ole Miss where you see the inexperience that they have as a group, collectively, and you can see them kind of trying to figure it out on both sides of the ball. Ethan Morton, their best defender, him being able to bring a little bit more to the table offensively, just knocking down an open jumper here and there, or, play a little bit of bully ball. He's got decent size. If he can, kind of create for himself within 10 feet of the basket, that'd be fine too. Just, you can't be completely inept offensively, because it's going to change how defenses run at you. And we've already seen that at times where they'll basically just dare him to shoot. And if he can't take advantage of that, that's going to put them in a disadvantageous position on the offensive side there. Admittedly, don't know a ton about UC Riverside. I've not watched them very much. CSU has the Rams winning this game by about 10 on Ken Palm there. Big opportunity at home. That's really what it comes down to. These first couple of games, this has really been a feel it out period. Injuries, unfortunately, have shaken up some of what I was hoping to see. But you have an opportunity at home here, and an opportunity to continue to get valuable minutes for all these guys. It's going to take a while for the veterans to figure it out in the system, but it's clear that they're going to be pretty dependent on Kyle Jorgensen this year, especially if Bemba is dinged up. These are really valuable for him, and hopefully come March, this team is a whole lot better than they are right now, because I do think their ceiling is decent. It's just a matter of if they're able to figure it out or not. They've got so many different pieces. Sometimes having this much versatility is both a blessing and a curse. It all kind of depends on if it works out or not, I guess. Yeah, I'll have post-game content. I'll have an audio-only podcast this weekend where I talk more hoops as well. So make sure you're following us on Twitter, all that fun stuff. We'll have plenty of hoops content tonight. Let's get into the Mountain West power ranking here. We'll work from the bottom, then we'll get to the top. Admittedly, I had UNLV jump CSU. I'm just going to tell you now. I thought they got a little bit more style points last weekend. Also, I kind of want the Rams to have a little bit to prove. We're doing this a little bit strategically here. Let's get into the Mountain West power ranking, then I'll give my Week 13 picks, get to some of your questions and comments, and we'll call it a morning. I dropped Hawaii to 12, and admittedly, this is out of emotion. They are not the worst team in the league. This is a statement. They need to look in the mirror and think about what they have done. They got thumped in Logan. Opportunity to, keep their bowl bid on the table and to just get murdered by a Utah State team that had nothing at all to play for. Really disheartening. The fact that it snowed was bad vibes for them from the beginning. Remember seeing the first pictures and I was like, shit, here we go. Hawaii is about to get thumped. They did. Really disappointing though, because we have been so pro Hawaii on this podcast. Really talked them up, and this one stings. So we made a statement. They've got to figure it out, and the only way they can redeem themselves is by getting a win on Senior Day and basically doing what they did to CSU last year and playing spoilers for New Mexico. They're on a bye this week, but a big matchup against the Lobos, who are now playing for a bowl bid after upsetting Washington State. We've got Wyoming at 11. Could make an argument that they should be 12, but they didn't get murdered the same way that Hawaii did offensively. They are just rough at the moment. 10, San Diego State, really struggling now on a 3-game losing streak, I believe. Offensively, they just don't have it. Defensively, they've regressed as the season has gone on. I've got Nevada at 9, Air Force at 8. Don't look now, but Air Force quietly putting together a little winning streak. They thumped Fresno at home, then they shut out Oregon State. Oregon State has just completely fallen apart. But I think that's the highest they've been in the rankings since like September. So shout out to Air Force. We've got Utah State at 7. Offensively, they're putting some points on the board. They've been a mess defensively for most of the year. But that game does make me a little bit nervous. I'm not going to lie. They're just able to put points on the board. They've got good receivers. Petrus can sling it a little bit. So they're a team to keep an eye on for sure. We've got Fresno at 6. I debated on whether to drop them out of the top 6 or not. They're still getting some respect from Vegas, all things considered, the fact that they're favorites this weekend. I've got New Mexico at 5. Big time win. One of the, if not the best win of the season from the Mountain West so far was that upset of Washington State. How can you not be happy for the Lobos under Mendenhall? Just really cool. And I really do hope to see them make a bowl game. San Jose State at 4. They're just, I don't know. I struggle in that second tier there. I think there's clear tiers in the top 6 with Boise, UNLV, and CSU at the top. And then San Jose State, New Mexico, Fresno State, I do think is that clear-cut next tier. It kind of depends on the week. I think you could shuffle it up and basically roll a dice, and that's kind of where you would get. But I do think there are clear-cut tiers there. And then the next tier would probably be that Utah State, Nevada range, then Air Force, San Diego State, Hawaii, and then Wyoming is probably in a tier at their own. But again, we had to make a statement with Hawaii because we were offended and hurt after seeing the way they laid an egg there after being so pro Timmy Chang. And I do believe in him. I'm not selling my Timmy Chang stock or anything like that. I'm keeping in it. I believe long term he is the right guy for that gig. Well, it's just disappointing because I really thought with Shaker back this year, they had an opportunity, much like CSU, to kind of build off of some ups and downs last year, but take it to that next level. They unfortunately have not. Rounding out the power rankings, like I said, we've got CSU 3, UNLV 2. Had CSU above them the last couple of weeks, but I thought UNLV earned some style points in that win over San Diego State. And much like we're trying to make a statement to Hawaii that they need to step up, we want to give a little fuel to CSU on their fire. Oh, you think we're only 3rd? we'll show you. I'm sure they care so much about my power rankings. But yeah, we got them at 3, UNLV at 2. Boise sitting there at 1. Don't think you can really argue the top spot. CSU 2 or 3, I think, is a debate at this point. But I'm hoping to add some fuel to their fire going into this matchup with Fresno State. All right, before we get out of here, I'm going to get these Week 13 picks against the spread, get to a couple of your questions and comments, and we'll roll. If you've got any more questions and comments, get them going in the Toyota chat. We'll get to as many as we possibly can. UNLV, 7.5-point favorites against San Jose State tonight. San Jose State failed to cover in 8 of their last 9 home games, so that's not positive. CSU should be rooting for San Jose State. They let us down last weekend. I have a hard time backing them after that disgusting performance last week. They're up 14-0 with a chance to go up 21-0, get stuffed at the goal line. Don't end up even covering by the time it's all said and done, and lose by 21 themselves. It was very CSU against Utah State last year, and Logan just ugly. They've lost 11 straight to ranked teams as well, so also not encouraging. I think that they're able to hang around for a while, but I do think UNLV has it figured out. I think they probably win this game by about 9-10. So give me UNLV to cover the 7.5. Womp womp. San Diego State at Utah State. Utah State 5-point favorites. Some love for that Aggie offense. San Diego State has looked dead in the water. Give me the Aggies to cover the 5 at home on their senior day. Boise State 23-point favorites on the road against Wyoming. Probably the most important game for Ram fans to keep an eye on around the league. I will say Wyo's covered 6 straight against ranked teams. 8 of the last 9 between these two have gone under. It's been kind of a slugfest. Boise has won 10 straight league games, though, since the Holy Holker loss against CSU last year. 23 is pretty steep in Laramie. I do think there's a world in which, especially if Wyoming is as inept offensively as they were against CSU, where, yeah, this is like a 30-point loss. I would assume Wyoming's going to get the ball to Harrison Whaley more and try and shorten the game a little bit. This could be a game where there's not a ton of possessions if both teams are running the ball well. Give me Wyo to cover the 23 hesitantly. I don't feel good about it, but they're daring me with that number. Air Force going to Reno. Reno, 3-point favorites against the Falcons. Give me Air Force to win outright on the road. Nevada looking to snap a 9-game losing streak against Mountain West teams. If they can't pull it off here, probably going to go this whole season without a Mountain West win, which would be tough. As frisky as they've been, they've got to find a way to win one of these. Finally, CSU at Fresno. Fresno, 3-point favorite. Of course, we're rocking with the Rams. Still got the hair going. Still buying in it. We're in it to win it. I think CSU is the better team. I really do. Historically, this is where the Rams have let us down, and there is admittedly a big part of me in the back of my head that is given those negative messages. We've been here so many times. CSU never lives up to this moment. They also don't tend to win the type of games they've been winning of late, though, and I think there's something different with this group. I think they're focused. I think they are playing very fundamentally sound football in every phase of the game in a way that we have not seen in quite some time. I think these teams are trending in different directions. I think we're catching Fresno State at the right time. I'd rather play this game now than in September. I like CSU, and I like the spot that they're in. I think they get it done. I think they win out on the road, extend the winning streak to 6, and set up an opportunity on senior day for the Rams to potentially make history. I really want to see the team capitalize on this moment. I think it would just go so far with eliminating some of the skepticism and really getting everybody to buy into what's being built in this program, which I do feel like is legitimate. And I think there's tangible proof in a lot of ways. Obviously the results are the easiest thing to look at, but I think what's been really encouraging about this year is seeing how many young guys have stepped up and performed, in particular defensively in the rotation. You're seeing a lot of guys in the secondary, at linebacker, in the trenches. They're not necessarily starting, but the Owen Longs of the world, Drew Rodriguez they're really stepping up and making plays. Kenyon Aggers at defensive end. They've got a lot of really up and coming talent that is is pretty encouraging there. And you're seeing some of it break through offensively as well. Caleb Goody's a sophomore. Tanner Morley. A lot of these guys are very young, and they're going to need some of them to continue to step up, especially without Torrey Horton. I'm really bummed that the Rams won't have him in this game. He's from Fresno. It was a matchup we had highlighted on the calendar from the summer. Just felt like he was destined to go into Fresno and just light him up in front of a bunch of friends and family. It's a little bit cruel that it's worked out that way, but they've got to go win this for Torrey. That's how I look at it. Go win the Mountain West for Torrey, a guy who could have gone P4, could have gone to the NFL, was loyal. He's been tough as hell his entire career. Heartbreakingly went down with a knee injury. Do right by him and make it all worth it in the end. Go win a Mountain West championship and really cement your legacy as probably the greatest team post Sonny Lubick. I mean, if they went out and they truly won a Mountain West championship, how could you argue it at that point? I think even getting to 9 wins and getting to the title game makes a pretty interesting debate with stacking them up against the 2014 team. The winning percentage against, when you look at the quality of teams, it's pretty similar. It really is. I mean, if you would have pulled out that Oregon State game, it would have been an easier argument, I think, in favor of the 2024 side. But go out and seize the moment. That's what it really comes down to. Kyle wants to know any more rumblings about the Pac-12 expansion. I saw they announced negotiation rights. Getting that deal with Octagon was huge. That's kind of the next major step. Now, Octagon will essentially go to all these networks and say, what will you give us if we add just Texas State? What will you give us if we add Memphis? What about this? What about that? You can have some actual concrete numbers to then go to some of these AAC teams or Texas State. It seems like that's what it's going to come down to. You find a way to add, a Memphis and Tulane, or you pivot and you add a team in Texas State who in theory is up and coming. I think there's an argument to be made for them, but to me, Memphis is the big school. They've got to find a way to go get done. I don't have inside info in terms of are they close or anything like that, but I can pretty much guarantee you there have been, at least through, privately behind the scenes, a lot of conversations between the Pac-12 and a lot of these programs, because you can't sit on your hands right now. Yeah, Kyle says Texas State getting a 7-year contract was substantial. It's a significant commitment to their future. And I think Texas State turning down the Mountain West tells you a lot, because I don't think they do that if they don't believe that an invite to the Pac-12 is coming either this year or at some point down the line. They're betting on themselves, which is kind of what all of these schools in the Pac-12 are doing. And that's a mindset and a mentality that I can get behind. Henry wants to know, way too early, but where do you think Gardner gets drafted? It's a really good question. I think he's a day 3 pick. That's a lot of range, I know. I think probably somewhere between that 5th and 7th round. He's got pretty good size for a center. He's been really good this year. Maybe I don't think he's going to murder it at the combine or anything like that. And I think Drew Moss, for instance, is going to test a little bit better in that process, just a little bit quicker, a little twitchier, that type of stuff. He's really, really strong. But I think there's a pretty good opportunity for both Drew Moss and Jacob Gardner to be day 3 picks this year. If not UDFAs, but I think both of those guys have a future in the NFL. Charlie wants to know, Rams look like it's going to be a rainy day in the Valley. Thought on taking shots to Stephon Daly and Maher versus Ollie, Goffney, Winfield. Yeah, I mean, the rain, I think, probably benefits a team like CSU, who runs the ball effectively, versus Fresno State, who has really struggled to run the ball with consistency these past couple of weeks. I think you kind of rock with the receivers you have. Goffney has been hurt, so we have not seen him in over a month. We won't see him the rest of the year. Ollie, he had an ankle injury in camp that just kind of slowed him down, and it seems like he's maybe just never gotten back to that peak form. He is a guy who's been on the field more the last couple of weeks, so I could see potentially him, getting some more looks. But Stephon Daly, I do think you could see some more looks for him. Maher as well. I think Goody and Winfield at this point have established themselves as those top 2 guys. But I do think you've got to find a way to work all these receivers into the mix. Stephon Daly, Tommy Maher, Jordan Ross obviously had a big catch on 3rd down this past week. Whatever you can. you don't have the depth that you had at receiver a year ago. If a walk-on like Tommy Maher is going to step up and make plays for you, so be it. Does not matter. Whoever's able to step up and get it done. That was a great catch, ran a great route. But yeah, you do want to see some of that young talent like Daly, and I know we saw him more on the field this past week. Him and Jamari Person are definitely some targets that I think they could afford to get into the mix a little bit more here as the season comes to an end, because those guys, hopefully, there's no guarantees in the portal era, but hopefully will be a major part of what you're doing offensively down the line here. All right, that's all I've got for you guys this morning. We'll have a post-game show Sunday morning with the late night game. Big opportunity for the Rams against Fresno State. I'll have all kinds of written content on it as well. We'll have hoops coverage coming your way tonight. Shout out to everybody for rocking with us in the Toyota chat. Shout out to everybody listening down the line on the audio only side. So much love for everybody in Ram Nation. Much love, y'all. Always proud to be. Peace.
We all silly like the mayor.